events of World War I, II, and the Cold War, which precede and include the book, and the hero Ralph from William Golding's novel Lord of the Flies. First, I'm going to be talking about the modern British and postmodern literary period, and then the historical period, as I just mentioned, and then finally the book. So let's proceed. All right. As far as the literary period of modern and beginning postmodern period, it ran from 1901 to 1954. Diversity is a lot of diversity started showing up in literature after the wars, and the themes that were discussed were the struggle for peace and the change in the Western values and traditions because of the war, because of Hitler, because of things that had been happening in history. And so decisions now were based on reality and fantasy. They intertwined. There wasn't one answer anymore. And the heroes, the characteristics of the heroes had begun to change. Instead of being the strongest, the fastest, the most intelligent, they became more vulnerable and more human-like in their characteristics. We're going to be talking about 3 different books of that time period. Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, which was before the World War II. George Orwell, Animal Farm, was also during the war, I'm sorry. And William Golding was during the Cold War, after World War I. And they're all trying to bring forth the events of Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, and dictatorship and the vulnerability of people. Okay. All 3 novels talk about human ethics and the decay of human ethics and morals because of collapse of. I gotta stop. Okay, sorry. So Animal Farm and Lord of the Flies are allegories. They're both fables in the way that they have characteristics of fables and try to teach a moral. However, Orwell had animals in his story, and Lord of the Flies, Golding used real people. And Brave New World was more about the developments in technology, as well as sleep learning that induced people's thoughts so that society would change. We had Hitler in Germany, we had Mussolini, where'd his picture go? And we had Stalin. Oh! We had Stalin, all dictators in the world and very powerful during that time. And the end of their reign brought on the Cold War. And then we had Harry Truman, who was a Democratic leader, but also had the power to drop 2 atomic bombs on Japan at the end of World War II and start the Cold War. to keep the boys civilized. He wanted them to have rules. He wanted them to follow order. He developed the thought of the conch shell. Whoever had possession of the conch shell was the one that got to speak. He tries to maintain the order and focus, and then he stands up for the weak. He protected the younger children and his friend Piggy, who was by name chubby and not very socially acceptable. So at the end of the novel, Ralph does not present the typical hero, and that he sort of loses his battle, but gains the realization that is the crux of the message of the novel, let's say. So Lord of the Flies allows our students to explore themes of power, control, abuse, respect or lack thereof, and how these issues can be positive or negative depending on how they're influenced onto others, and the vulnerability of others as well. Okay, it's important to understand that for our students that how easily democracy can be challenged, and that it can ultimately be replaced by anarchy, as we witnessed with Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin, and well, even in Cuba. Sorry. All right. So. Sorry. All right. So we've got the kids going from choir boys. They landed as choir boys on the island. Oops. And ultimately changed into savages, led into savagery because of their fear and because of a stronger leader who had dictator-like characteristics. Okay. In conclusion, I've covered three main points. The literary period of the book, Lord of the Flies, which is our main novel, the modern literary period and the postmodern literary period. I reviewed the historical period in Europe, with the Cold War and World War II being the basis of the historical period, and the Cold War being the time when Lord of the Flies was written. And then finally we discussed Ralph, our hero, and learned that although he is not ultimately the winner at the end of the story, he is the one who has the epiphany that teaches us about the struggle between democracy and dictatorship, and how easy a shift can go into evil through vulnerability of others, of the weaker people. I believe that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.